thing I want to do, obviously, is I think we need to recognize that Councilman Williams lost his wife, Rita, last week, and I want to extend from the entire City Hall, city government family for Roland, our deepest condolences and sympathies, and our prayers are still with him and his family, and hope that they can get some strength in these coming weeks and months ahead of them as they deal with this loss. So if we would, I'd like you all to join me in a moment of silence in memory of Rita Williams. Thank you. Need to announce that we will be going in executive session briefly at the end of this meeting pursuant to KR 61-810, paragraph 1C, discussions of proposed or pending litigation against or on behalf of a public agency. We'll be doing that at the end of this meeting. As far as recognition of groups and individuals, I do need to recognize, I think we have a new media person attending tonight. Dennis House, as you all know, I think took a promotion from the Kentucky Standard to Lebanon Enterprise, and in his place this evening is Dennis George. So we want to welcome Dennis, representing the Kentucky Standard, joining, I think, our regular guys, Jim Brooks and Matt Gordon. So happy to have you with us tonight, Dennis. And feel free to call if you got any questions on anything tomorrow after the meeting. All right, we'll move on then to, we've got a lot on our agenda tonight. So we need to kind of move expeditiously if we can. So we have Amendment 2 from HDR for engineering services at our American Greetings pump station upgrade. So Jessica, if you give us some background here, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. If you recall the last meeting, we had a change order request for additional time for 7C's construction for the American Greetings pump station. And at the time, the only what I anticipated happening was due to the additional time for the pump delay, that we would have some additional contract services and inspection services from HDR. That's exactly what this Amendment 2 is there additional fees for the project taking longer in the amount of $3,800.
Okay, thank you. Anyone have any questions of Jessica? This is kind of straightforward. There's another 60 days, so they need $3,800 to cover their costs during this time period to complete their services. All right, if no one has any other questions, I'd ask for a motion to approve the Amendment 2, the American Greetings pump station for HDR engineering fees of $3,800.
So moved, Mayor.
We have a motion by Councilman Bones and a second by Councilman Williams. Is there any other discussion? All in favor then signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion's carried. Then we have another, we have an Amendment 1 for HDR's engineering services for another task they are doing for the city. So Jessica, you want to talk to us about that?
Yes. For the America's Water Infrastructure Act required that all systems perform risk and resiliency surveys, as well as create and establish and update the emergency response plans. HDR Engineering helped the city meet our deadline of July 1st for our risk and resiliency assessment. And this amendment is to obtain their services to actually update and establish our emergency response plan that will kind of enact a lot of those things identified in the risk and resiliency survey. So this is a requirement and that we have a deadline to meet of December 31st. So kind of time's critical to kind of get them moving forward on these services so that we can have this plan updated and in place per regulatory requirements.
All right. Do you recall if this was covered in your professional services line item on budget?
Yes,
You got
this
money to
was
cover
in my
that?
budget.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Does anyone else have any other questions of Jessica on this amendment for HDR services? If not, then I need a motion to approve the amendment 1 of $30,000 for HDR to do their update for the emergency response plan. That's a requirement under the America's Water Infrastructure Act.
So moved,
So
Mayor.
moved, Mayor.
We have a motion by Councilwoman Hart. I didn't catch that second.
Councilman Hibbs, sir.
All right. Councilman Hibbs on the second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion's carried. All right, Jessica, looks like you're still up. First part of this agenda.
Yes. The next item is a service request for Meadowbrook Estates. This is a small subdivision off of Lutheran Church Road that actually kind of backs up to Miller Springs subdivision. This request would be installation of some sewer main extensions that would then drain into the Miller Springs pump station. Since we're currently had budgeted some upgrades to Miller Springs pump station that were planned to be underway once Corman's Crossing and Royal Crest pump station upgrades were completed, so that we could make sure that the station can continue to get in and pump into the 10-inch force main along Highway 245. Those upgrades were kind of planned in that way. But this development was not initially in the design plans for the current Miller Springs pump station. So while we're doing those upgrades to Miller Springs, we can anticipate and help and accommodate this additional flow. So that this request is for us to take in any new sewer mains, and once the upgrades at Miller Springs are completed, we'll be able to handle that additional flow without reoccurring overflows. I'll kind of skip ahead to that next item, sewer upgrade agreement. That goes hand in hand with this service request, and the developer, Mr. Luke Razor, has already agreed, as discussed, to help pay the contribution to that upgrade for the pump station so that we can take in that development. That fee will be prorated based on the percent capacity of the pump station that they will be utilizing. So this is similar to the one we've recently done in a few other areas. And again, I think we did one for Big Springs, a latest phase of Big Springs for the American Greetings station, very similar to that. And as you can see, kind of those line items are worked out and described in that letter of agreement with Mr. Razor. So hopefully that explains that project.
Jessica, I have one question, if I may.
Sure.
Does that, so the developer is paying their percentage of the cost for the upgrade, does that entitle them to any future additional build outs that could potentially be hooked onto that system also? In other words, do we have to build in extra capacity for another phase?
There's not a lot of land available that will naturally gravity to this station otherwise, but we are planning to add and build in a little bit of future, some future growth just in case. And the same thing will happen if once that develops, they'll have to pay additional percentage of that capacity they're taking, so that the city's not, we're kind of building it up front rather than constantly having additional projects. So it'll be based on that same percentage based at that time of platting and design, if they use up that capacity. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think the first item on the agenda is we need to approve the service request by Meadowbrooks Estate for their development off Lutheran Church Road that, based on Robin Mills's letter, meets our criteria and specifications required for those developments. And as Jessica, our city engineer, alluded to, that there's another agreement in place that's going to provide this additional capacity on that pump station, and the developer is paying a portion of that for this development. So I need a motion to approve this request.
So moved, Mayor.
A motion then by Councilman Bones. Is there a second?
I'll second that, sir.
All right, second by Councilman Buckman. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is carried. Then I guess, Jessica, we do need to go ahead and formally approve this agreement for the upgrade with Razor Home Builders Corp.
Yes, I think we should have an approval for entering into this agreement with them.
All right. Jessica kind of covered that. Is there any other questions regarding this? It's similar to one. I think we may have another one probably going to happen out at near Samuels and the Deatsville area also. We've had some participation on those upgrades.
We've had a few recently.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So if there's no other questions, could I have a motion then to approve this agreement and the formula that bases their cost and participation of this upgrade for Razor Home Builders, Inc.?
So moved.
All right, we have a motion by Councilman Williams and a second by,
I'll second that, sir.
all right, second by Councilman Buckman. Any other discussion? Seeing none, then all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is carried. All right. Jessica, one more here. It looks like change order number 8 for the Public Works Building, which is, I guess, 99% complete, I guess, or close to, at least the building is.
Yes, we're in the home stretch, This change order is almost a balancing change order. It's kind of items that hadn't previously made it on the final bill. For say, the total change order is in the amount of $4,218.46. A couple of the items that you see that are smaller for like $320 and $386, where it says materials not purchased on their POs. Those were items we were otherwise purchasing directly, but for whatever reason, they got added to BCD's invoices for some other items that they were paying, and they went ahead and paid it before they caught it. So we still would have paid for that anyway. We just didn't pay it directly. This kind of had to go back onto their payment for authorization. So the other item is for a waste oil heater repair that we already owned and that BCD installed into the new shop. And they had to make some repairs to it in order to get it functional, up and operational. So that's what the biggest item, the $3,300 pay item was for, just to make those repairs for our equipment we already owned that and get it installed. And then we actually had a $750 deduction for the canopies that were actually added and used on the building versus the actual bid canopy.
Okay. Anyone have any questions of Jessica on these particular items on this change order? Okay, and then would ask for a motion then to approve these. And I think, as I said earlier, Jessica, this pretty well gets this building almost done. That we have some fencing and other improvements and signage on this site, but as far as the building, they've moved into it a few weeks ago, I think, so they're using the building now.
Correct. We are using the building. We're actually meeting to do a walkthrough of the building, a final kind of closeout, I believe tomorrow, with the architect and the contractor. And there's a few like items that we're trying to get resolved, but for the most part, the building and the contract are mostly complete. The fencing and the sign, those are on things that we're handling ourselves. And I believe the fencing contractors already has a schedule to come out and do that work. Started putting up lights and those types of things. So yeah, we're using the building and it's coming together.
Thank you. Okay. If we could, then I'd like to get a motion then to approve these change orders.
So moved, Mayor.
All right, thank you, Councilman Hibbs. And do I have a second?
I'll second it again.
All right, thank you, Councilman Buckman. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. All right, thank you, Jessica. Before we get into donations, I want to go to the financial report, line item number 5. I talked to Aaron here recently. We received not a large amount of funds, but we did receive some more CARES Act funds that we had not anticipated that can be used like they were last year, the original funds that we used, and some of those we distributed to some of our nonprofits and organizations that are working to mitigate the impact on COVID here in the community. So as you remember, we reduced our community grant line item by $10,000 on this year's budget. But with this new money that came in, Aaron and I feel like that we could take $20,000 of it and put that into this community grant line item fund. And that way we feel like with the way COVID has come back on us, we need some more money in that fund to help these that are working to help expedite COVID, but then some of the other organizations that we normally give to as well. So I guess, Aaron, we probably need a motion to use some of those recent CARES Act funds to be put in our community grant fund. And we're recommending $20,000 to bring that fund for the year would be $60,000. Now we've given some monies away already, but that would take it up to 60 for this year. Has anyone got any comments on that?
And I don't think that we'll need a motion just yet for that. I can include the changes to that budget line item through just our mid-year amendment or end-of-year amendment.
Okay.
Actually just adjusting that line item through a budget ordinance itself.
All right. Okay. Then with that being said, we'll move back up to our donation request. I'm trying. I don't recall which one of the council members is a sponsor for Bethany Haven.
That would be me,
David.
Mayor.
Yeah, I'm sorry, David. It's your request. Would you like to talk to us about it?
Yes, sir, and thank you. Yeah, I would again like to proudly sponsor the donation request by Bethany Haven, and I think everyone on the council, of course, is familiar with their work for those experiencing homelessness in our community. And Bethany Haven has provided that support also as for transitional housing, which is especially in this day and time is something that's huge, a huge need right now. So the donation request by Bethany Haven is $20,000. I'd like to open that up to discussion by the council.
Okay, thank you, David. Last year, if you know, we gave them $18,000, and I think 10 of that was from our normal community grant fund monies that were available, and 8,000 came through the CARES Act funding. So that additional wasn't a kind of a repetitive, number, I guess, that we could bank on being able to use CARES Act, but we do have some extra this year. I think in talking to Aaron and anticipating some of the other requests we're going to get, I was comfortable with 15,000, but I'll let you all, it's your all's decision. If you all want to go back to meet the 20 or the 18,000 we gave them last year, I'm just throwing that out for discussion based on my conversation with Aaron and review of our other donations historically that we give out of this fund.
Mayor, I would be in favor of the 15,000. I think that any of us can ride through town on any given night and realize that our homeless population is growing. And so the work that Bethany Haven is doing is certainly important to our community and to the people that they're serving. So I appreciate all of their work on that.
All right, thank you, Betty.
And Mayor, if I may say so, Bridget Wilson's also on the call on the Zoom meeting. If anyone has any additional questions, or if Bridget would like to speak to the mission of Bethany Haven.
Okay, I wasn't aware Bridget was on, so thank you, David. If Bridget would like to speak, I'd be happy to let her talk to us.
I would love to just say a little bit about why we've gone from the 10 to 20,000. Obviously, we've had more expenses with COVID because our volunteer base for the Room in the Inn program has dipped down some. So we've had to make some adjustments to that. But the main reason is that last year we started a men's transitional shelter. So we've always been the women with children, Room in the Inn program, and now we have a men's shelter. So that's going to increase our cost. And we have up to 9 men that we can house in that. And we've hired, we had an executive director. Now we have another person that is full-time. She part-time runs half of her job is running the Room in the Inn program, which is really important to have somebody consistent do that, because we have to do intake and filter these people to know that they're not actively on drugs. They don't have a warrant out for their arrest, for the safety and security of all the people in the churches that do the volunteering. So we felt it important to have somebody consistent on our staff to know how to do that screening service for those that are coming into the emergency shelter. And then also the other half of her time is dedicated to doing casework for those that are in the transitional housing. So as quickly as possible, we can get them stabilized and out into affordable housing. So those are the main reasons why our expenses have increased, because we are actually adding more services to better meet those needs, to move people through as quickly as possible, as many as we possibly can. I'm happy to take any other questions.
Thank you, Bridget.
Bridget, this is Joe.
Yeah,
Your budget, how much has it increased in a year's time? Is that is that okay to answer that?
Yeah, I can tell you what our budget is. It's about 200,000 this year,
Okay,
this
yeah.
fiscal year. Yeah. And I want to think it was maybe 130 before that.
Wow.
Yeah. And again, a lot of that has been us trying to move towards what we think is a sustainable model for Bethany Haven. One of the things that we are really trying to focus on is that if this organization is only dependent upon a few volunteers, then when those volunteers move on to something else, it's not sustainable. So we're trying to build a sustainable organization so that it can continue to do its work regardless of one individual that donates a lot of time. The second thing that we've done is not just look to the city and the county for funds. Obviously, we always write grants. Sisters of Charity of Nazareth and the Catholic Health Initiatives, and then Gethsemane have been huge supporters of ours. But we also kicked off a corporate sustainability campaign this year, in which we have visited all the distilleries, all the financial institutions, and are currently visiting all of the larger employees and asking them for 5-year modest donations to help sustain us. And we've had an incredible result from that. So this is why we've come to you all for the 20, but at the same time, we have actively tried to make up that difference to say, this is what we think our community needs in as far as to try to meet the needs of those that we feel can move successfully through our program. We service about 200 people a year. That's been pretty standard and average, about 200 people a year. 75 to 80% of those are all Nelson County. And we give priority to our transitional housing, of course, to Nelson County residents. So it really is our own that we're taking care of. I hope that doesn't increase for us. We're a bit worried about when all the evictions come, but again, all we can do is to try to focus on providing the services that we know to stabilize these people and get them moving through and get into permanent housing. Right now, everybody in the 2 transitional housings are working full time. So we're pretty proud of that.
Are both houses full, Bridget?
They're always full, yes. If the only time that we have a room, it's because we've transitioned somebody out and we're waiting to screen somebody else to come in. But yes, so we have 7 rooms over at the women's shelter, and then they get private rooms because often they have children, even though the rest of the space is shared, but they have a small room to themselves. The men, there's 3 bedrooms over there, and there's 3 men to a room. So they do more sharing, but that's just the circumstances that we have for them. And I will throw out there, if you all would like to come tour, I'm sure you've probably maybe been through what was the women's shelter we now call Christie's Place, but we would love for you to come see the men's shelter. We're pretty proud of that and super proud of the Nelson County people that made that happen, that did all that work for us. But adding another shelter is obviously an added expense. And then COVID, we've applied and are getting some reimbursement from the COVID stuff as well. But again, our volunteership has been down with the churches, as you can understand. As COVID goes up, more people are a little more nervous to do that. And so we sometimes pay innkeepers in order to still be able to offer the emergency shelter over at the Presbyterian Church, even though they're not necessarily housed there. But so that's kind of the difference in our budget. I don't anticipate we're going to grow much more as far as size. We're not looking to grow in size. We just want to adequately have the programs necessary to meet our mission. And we think that we've done this with these 2 transitional housing and now the Room in the Inn program.
And Mayor, if I may, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for yielding to your elder statesman.
Anytime.
I have a question for Aaron. I know that you and the mayor are suggesting 15,000, but if we donated 20, what does that do to us financially?
Well, where I was coming from, and I think Bridget knows that I'm very supportive of this line item, after we are able to move some money in from this new money we just got, is 60,000 for the entire year. So we have about 10 organizations that we support each year out of this line item. So 20,000 would take up 1/3 of the entire budget. So that's the only reason why I was hesitant on suggesting we take that on. If we were to do it, you all would have to understand, and Bethany Haven would have to understand, we may not be able to do that next year because we may not have CARES Act monies helping subsidize this line item like we are this year. So that's the only reason I wasn't 100% on the full ask, because it's a full 1/3 of the entire budget in this part of our budget.
Thank you, Mayor.
But I could live with some more if you all think. But it just have to understand, it might just be for this year. Can't guarantee we could do it again next year.
Mayor or Aaron, for cash flow purposes, do we need to spread whatever amount we decide on over 2 payments? Or should we give it all at one time?
No, we have plenty cash on hand.
Okay.
I'm in favor of Betty's saying, suggesting the 15,000. I'm in favor of that also.
I'll concur. I'll go with the 15. Joe and I, we've had the pleasure of serving on that Bethany Haven board, so we we know what an important job you guys do.
Thank you.
One
Mayor,
thing
I'm in
we
favor
could,
for 15,000 as well.
you know, one thing I would throw out to Bridget and to Councilman Jones, who sponsored, you know, if we don't get the full request for this money, some years, you know, we get near the end of the fiscal year, we have 3,000 or 4,000 left over. We would certainly, I'd be certainly open to revisiting that in the month, back in the month of June, which I don't know when their fiscal year is, but that's our fiscal year. So
Ours
we
is
might,
June as well.
so we might be able to supplement this 15,000 at that time. We just see how these other asks come in.
Thank
Okay,
you, Mayor,
so-
for that. I'm sorry.
All right. No, I'm just looking at the typical yearly ask, and most everybody's going to ask again as they do, but we might, I know some years we have a couple thousand left over or 3,000. We can go back to Bethany Haven at that point if we did have that money available. Good. Okay, so I think we had 2 or 3 different council members agreed that the 15,000 would be in order at this point. Who would like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion, Mayor, that we give $15,000 to Bethany Haven.
Okay. And
I'll
then we'll
second
put
it.
All right, we have
Sorry.
a motion by Councilwoman Hart and a second by Councilman Williams. And we would put that we could revisit this at year end to supplement the request. Okay, we'll add that to the motion. All right, any other discussion? All right, we have a motion and a second. Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's carried. All right, thank you all.
Thank you all very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank
Bridget.
you,
Thank
Bridget.
you, Bridget.
Thank you, Bridget.
All right, we have another request, Old Bardstown Village, and I think that's Councilman Shekels. You'd like
That's
to,
correct. That's correct. This $3,000 request from the Old Bardstown Village is to do some repair work. They've got a dilapidated bridge that's falling down there, and they've got some bids on it to fix it. It's more of a liability issue more than anything else that they want to avoid. So it's surely needed, and at this time, this is one of their busiest times of the year. So they've asked for this request, and I don't think it's out of the ordinary.
you know, we've typically given to them, but I'm looking, it doesn't look like they asked us last year. So I think we can certainly add this request for this year based on our funds that are available.
I'm having a little problem with my my tablet. Just all the donation things are not coming up completely, but fortunately, I looked at it the other day, so I'm familiar with what the requests are. So yeah, I'll be glad to sponsor that request from Old Bardstown Village and the Civil War Museum for $3,000.
All right, so we have a motion then by Councilman Shekels for Old Bardstown Village's request. Is there a second?
I'll second that, Mayor.
All right, second by Councilman Hibbs. Any other discussion?
Mayor, I have a quick question. Am I right? And that's city property, but then they lease that from us? Is that correct?
No, it's actually owned by the state of Kentucky.
Okay.
Lease to the Old Bardstown Village Inc.
Okay.
State bought that years ago in another transaction. I don't know all the details, but I do know my wife managed the state park, and that technically was under her purview. But it's always been managed by the board.
Right. I thought I had seen somewhere on PVA at some point that it was city property, but I didn't think that was correct. So thank you.
Well, I haven't got that deed in front of me, but I do know that the state park system owns, if not all of it, a significant portion of it. Now, I couldn't tell you on everything, but I'm pretty certain on that.
Okay.
I think it's the same setup they do with the Bardstown Dog Park. Same setup. state owns that property too. At least to the Bardstown Bark Park. Same setup.
Right.
As long as they take care of it and manage it, then I don't think the state will have a problem with it.
I don't think they get any support directly from the state, if I recall.
They don't.
Okay, we have a motion, and there's a second. I can't remember.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, Councilman Hibb, sorry.
No
All right,
worries.
there's no other discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried then.
Hey, Mayor, could I plug one thing for that museum, for the Civil War Museum?
Sure.
Since it is, I guess it's more or less a nonprofit, but I know that they're looking to expand their board, and they're actually hopefully looking for someone that's got some background, preferably in actually somebody that's got CEO skills, maybe retired CEO or somebody of that nature, or maybe an accountant, because they think over the next few years it's going to be paramount that they have somebody in place to help keep moving this forward. And I might be wrong on this, but their budget is like I think it's only like $12,000 a year or something. It is phenomenally low. It's unbelievable how they run that, but they know that if they don't start to grow this a little bit and get some good board members, that they could lose the museum. And Bob Llewellyn, if y'all know him, it would just break his heart. So Bob is actively looking for board members, and this is a good chance if anybody's hearing and like to step up, they would surely like to talk to you. Okay.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
And Mayor, just to follow up, the last time we made a donation to them was FY20 back in March of 2020. We gave $10,000 to them. I think they had some capital improvement projects that they were working on back then.
Right. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think we missed a year in between that time.
Right. FY21, we didn't do anything.
Thank you, Aaron. Okay, we'll move on then to the minutes. Everybody had a chance to review the minutes. If there's no additions or corrections, we'll approve them by unanimous consent. All right, we'll move on down. We have a second reading this evening. Did the first reading in the last meeting. I guess we need to have our city attorney read the summary of B 2021-11 related to our Chapter 35, our employment policies.
Thank you, Mayor. Summary of Ordinance B 2020-11, Classification and Compensation Plan. An ordinance amending and adopting as amended an ordinance creating the Classification and Compensation Plan. This ordinance amends Chapter 35, Employment Policies. The Classification Plan and Compensation Plan is a municipal code by creating and amending the pay grade and scale and number of authorized positions. The City Council of the City of Bardstown, Kentucky does hereby ordain that Chapter 35 Employment Policies, the Classification, Pay, and Compensation Plan be amended by first increasing the total number of positions in the engineering department from 8 positions to 9 positions to include any combination of the following job titles. Title WTP Maintenance Specialist, grade 109, WTP Operator 4, 109, WTP Operator 3, 106, WTP Operator 2, 104, WTP Operator 1, 102, and WTP Operator Trainee, grade 102. With respect to the pay grade scale, the minimum and maximum pay for all pay grades shall be increased by 2.5% to reflect a cost of living increase. All ordinances in conflict herewith are hereby repealed to the extent of such conflict. This ordinance shall take effect immediately upon its passage, approval, and publication as required by law. This summary was prepared by me, City Attorney Audrey Hayden.
So I guess, Greg, this is just really to clean up and identify the number of positions that we have in these classifications.
Yes, sir, that's exactly right. And to add the 2.5%. When Don Wilson, retired, we didn't realize he was pulling duties on 2 jobs. He was pulling maintenance down there, and he was also the chief operator. And we've realized that in order to keep up that same amount of service that we had to increase a maintenance specialist. So that's why it's going from 8 to 9.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, this is a second reading. If I could, then I need a motion then to approve the changes to B 2021-11, chapter 35 of our employment policies, classification and compensation plan as presented.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Williams. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, second by Councilman Buckman. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Individual vote, Mayor.
I'm
Oh, yeah.
sorry, thank
That's
you.
right.
I've been off too long in these meetings. Yes, let's start with Councilman Hibbs,
Aye.
Councilwoman Hart,
Aye.
Councilman Buckman,
Aye.
Councilman Williams,
Aye.
Councilman Shekels,
Aye.
Councilman Jones.
Aye.
Okay, second reading has passed, and thank you. Thanks for catching me, Bill. I just noticed, I got a text that we have someone else joining us this evening, and I don't want her to have to sit for several more agenda items. So I'd like to move down to new business. Bourbon City Peddlers, we have Victoria Hoff. I think she and her husband are the owners of this business. She's on the here if we have questions for her. So I'd like to move to that item on our agenda.
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
We just got this a week ago, I think. Is that correct, Ms. Hoff?
Yes.
All right. So we haven't had a lot of time. This is kind of a unique request because we've never had a pedicab in the city. So we've got these, we have horse-drawn carriages and so forth. So we may have some questions for you, and our chief of police is here. She's got some familiarity with these. I guess I'd like to ask a couple of questions. Are you planning on, how soon would this business be going into start?
My husband, he is also on the line, but he's on his way to his part-time job. So I will fill in some questions for you guys the best that I can. So we would love to start as early as this weekend with the Bourbon Festival, providing transportation if possible.
Okay, so you have the vehicle.
We do.
You submitted the, okay.
Yes. The vehicle is fully operational with, it does have a brushless motor. There's also LED, both a headlight, tail lights, fully functional brakes, as well as turning signals as well. So it is safety regulated.
All right, so you've, you said the drivers are licensed and insurers. Is this, I guess, require a normal motor vehicle driver's license?
As far as our research had seen, it doesn't require any type of specific licensure. We are working with LaRue County here in Bardstown for our insurance. We do have that quote being prepared, and we were waiting for this meeting to really finalize, but we do want to make sure that we're looking at probably at least $1 million on insurance.
All right, and then the drivers, have any of these drivers ever operated a vehicle like this in another city or another setting?
So my husband, Joshua, will be the one who is operating the vehicle. He has not operated this particular type of vehicle specifically in another town. We've lived here in Bardstown and lived in Kentucky, which, as you know, doesn't
have much of a pedicab industry currently. We did, this is something that we have come across in other larger cities and other cities that offer tourism. So it was something that we felt would be very beneficial. My husband does, although, have extensive driving experience commercially as well as professionally. So he is also working with the maker of the bike with receiving training through video, and also just has already been on the bike and working to be familiar with it.
Okay. Are we talking about one pedicab?
We are starting currently, yes, with one pedicab. We would love to expand and grow this business over time, but starting with one to see, how we fit in the market.
I guess the biggest thing to me is that liability insurance. And you said maybe
Yes.
up to $1 million. I'm sure I feel like we probably have a number there that you'll have.
Right. When I looked at research in other cities, they usually typically request their pedicab drivers to have either a 1 million policy, or I have seen a 2 million policy.
Did you say you have that in place, or are you just still working on that?
It is in place. The quote is there. We wanted to wait till we had this meeting with Bardstown. As soon as tomorrow morning, we can call and have that insurance in place.
But the city is an additional insurer.
Say that again, Mr. Shekels, I wasn't sure.
Yes, usually when any of the food trucks or round the town carriers or anything like that, they have a minimum $1 million liability insurance, and they list the city as an additional insurer.
Okay.
Which is standard procedure. So you shouldn't have a problem.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
And Mayor, Gary and I talked about this earlier, and there's really not an ordinance that is necessarily on point relating to this in the city. Obviously, I would say that they would be governed by any rules about bicycles and how they operate on the roads. But we didn't really have a lot of time to sort of dig deep on whether or not other cities regulate them in other ways. I certainly can, but that wasn't something we had a lot of opportunity to find anything on before today.
Right, we just had it in place for a week, so it's asking a lot to turn this around since we don't have an ordinance in place. Chief Kressig, do you have any comments or questions? You probably had some of this in your other jobs.
So I am familiar with the Derby City pedicab, which is basically just the bike with where people can sit behind it and some seats. And like Audrey said, they're bound by the same rules on the road, the stop signs, the traffic lights, things like that. They have to follow those laws. We didn't have any issues with there was two that typically were operational around large events and things like that. We didn't have any issues with that at the time.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe that's the route we're intending to start with. This is, offering transportation during events that can take people around more in a short term, also eco-friendly option. We have actually for the past week or two, my husband and I have actually been canvassing the city in that specific area to look for traffic trends as far as when would not be an ideal safe time to be out, such as rush hours and things like that. So we are looking to make this as possible for both the drivers as the drivers on the road.
What would be the range of your services? Would it be just strictly limited to, obviously this is something we're talking about on the city level. Is it just strictly restricted to city limits? Because I can envision this, you picking up from our new hotels and coming down a busy Templin Avenue.
Yes.
But that's one thing that concerns me about it, is just really the safety aspect of it.
Right. So right now we're really looking to stay in downtown Bardstown, within the historical district. So if we were to look at a point of expanding into the hotel areas, what we would do is we would actually probably have a truck that would shuttle our cabs over there, and then they would stay strictly, in that area, versus coming out onto the busy road, Templin, or any of those type of areas. It does have a brushless mode, so it actually, with a lithium battery, so it can actually get a pretty good speed, around close to 20 miles per hour, 15 miles per hour very easily. So ideally what we would love to see is eventually expand into possibly offering tours to our historical areas, such as museums, and the homes as well. But ideally, as we are just starting off, we would be looking at more of events and things like that in the short term.
Thank you.
Hey, Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say I applaud your all's entrepreneurship. I think
Yeah.
it's a welcome asset in addition to Jonesy and the horse and buggy, and I think it's a great asset for our town.
All right, thank you, Councilwoman Hart. Is there any other discussion? I guess, I would be comfortable asking for a motion to approve this request. I think I would like to put a condition that we restrict it to one pedicab at this time. And make it that if they were going to add another pedicab, that we would want to have a period of time to see how this works, make sure there's not any problems. But and I would be open to more pedicabs if it proves to be a very good service and so forth. But I think starting out, I think we ought to maybe limit it to one, see how that works out, and then just put a condition that if they add another one, they just would need to come back and make that request of us again.
Yes, sir.
And Mayor, also too, under condition that they have the liability insurance.
Well, I'm not sure. I think based on what our city attorney is, I'm not sure yes, we have to have a copy of their liability, but
Correct.
I'm not sure that you have to make the city a loss payee.
Mayor, I don't think so. I'm not aware that Jonesy has done that, for example, with the horse-drawn carriage, unless the ordinance specifically requires it, but I can't imagine that it would. So
yeah, they're just a vehicular traffic on city and state streets.
Right.
So it's no different, I think, for this than it is. But we would have to, in the motion, we would have to require a copy of the liability insurance in hand before we would permit them to be operating.
when Mayor, if you wanted to, I mean, it would be a little bit unorthodox, so we could sort of condition the approval of this, upon reviewing if we needed to amend an ordinance at some point, give them a temporary license or something along those lines to determine if we think we're going to need any further regulation. I don't know that the city of Louisville has anything that's specific to that, for example. We could leave the door open if you felt like that was necessary. I think it could be appropriate to just approve one too, though.
Well, if we do ever put an ordinance in place, then any operator would have to
That's fair.
comply with that. So I'm okay if we do a motion this evening to approve it as requested, with requirement they present a copy of their insurance to us before they operate, and we limit it to one for now. And if they add to their fleet, that they would need to come back and request one more, an addition to that fleet.
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
All right, we have a motion by Councilwoman Hart. Is there a second?
I'll second that, Mayor.
All right. Any other discussion? I see Mr. Hoff's on the call. Thanks for sitting in. Sorry you couldn't talk while you're driving a car at the same time.
I just appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Good luck, and we'll
Thank you,
Thank
Mayor.
you so much.
hope to see you
Thank
out
you
on the
all.
streets this weekend.
Great.
Yes,
Thank you.
sir.
Thank
Y'all
you.
have a great night.
Thank you too.
Okay, we'll move back up. We're gonna have a first reading on our property tax rate, but I would like to ask our city CFO, Aaron Bowles, to talk about and for us to review the summary that he's given on the two options that we have. So Aaron, would you please talk to us about the two options, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So our 2021 assessments from the PBA increased substantially. Real property is up $78 million over last year. Tangible property is up $15.7 million over last year. So with that situation, we really have two options this year on what we can do. We can take what would be considered a 4% increase, but we'd actually drop our rates from the 17.9 cents per 100, drop that down to 17.8 cents per 100. So essentially the tax bills will go down for residents, but our revenue will increase 4%, which would generate approximately $98,000 of additional revenue based upon the assessments. And the second option would be to take what's called the compensating rate, which is a rate that generates approximately the same amount of property tax revenue as the previous years. And with these increased assessments, that rate would actually drop to 17.2 cents per 100. So again, it's pretty simple, just based upon the increased assessments. I do recommend we take option one. We drop the rates to 17.8 cents per 100 and take that 4% increase that's allowed by KRS statute. You know, as I've said in an email before, we're seeing increased wage and compensation pressure just on trying to attract and retain the top talent that we need to keep the city running. Retirement costs are increasing exponentially, and they don't even peak until FY23 and FY24. So we still have 2 more years of increasing retirement costs, and then those inflated rates are with us through 2040, 2042 time frame for those. You know, we're running a full-time, fully staffed police and fire department with continued needs, equipment needs, increased usage of our recreational facilities, and the idea of building a new recreational facility. I think we're well positioned where we need to maintain a higher property tax rate and take that 4%.
Okay. Anything else, Aaron?
Nope. That was it. Any questions?
Yeah.
Well, so in a nutshell, the only way you could have an increase in your property tax would be if you were reassessed, or for example, some of these tax moratoriums that we've issued are probably coming due. So that would add to that. But that's the only way you could have a rate in how much you pay.
Right.
If you were reassessed in value.
Right. As far as the individual throughout the community, yes. If your assessment stayed the same, your property tax bill is going to go down a little bit.
Go down. Okay. Right.
0.1%. It's not going to make too much of a difference.
Correct.
It is going to be reduced.
But and you know, so this would allow us to take in $98,000 more in the general fund. But as Aaron pointed out, the general fund, you know, it's an $11 million budget. So just inflation alone would eat up this $98,000. The points about Aaron talked about I've looked at our fuel bill alone. Our fuel bill is going to be, between 36 to almost 50,000 more this year, possibly, with the way the fuel costs have gone up, just that alone. So that's almost half of this amount of money, and just all kinds of things. The cost of street maintenance, cost of paving, that goes up each and every year. So this 98,000 doesn't go very far in an $11 million budget. So I agree that Aaron's making the right recommendation that we reduce the rates to 17.8 cents, which will allow us to take in a net of 4% more than we did last year. So I think that's the right way to go.
I'm in full agreement with Aaron and the mayor on taking the option one. I think that drop in anything to lower a tax rate is obviously looks good to the public right now, and I think that we would also have to do involve other public input if we took another option anyway. Is that correct, Aaron?
That's correct. Anything higher than the 4% increase, what's considered a 4% increase in revenue, gets subject to a recall vote. So I don't know exactly how that works. I think you have to have so many people petition to recall, and essentially your property tax rate kind of gets taken out of your control.
But Aaron, we will still need to have a public hearing. Is that correct?
Correct.
Before the second reading. Okay.
We'll have to have a public hearing at the second, right before the second reading.
Yeah, so we will, excuse me, to that question, Audrey, we will meet in person at our next meeting just to accommodate the public hearing prior to our regular meeting. So we are planning that, assuming this first reading on, assuming we have one of our council members introduce B 2021-12 with the property tax rate of 4%. Net increase by reducing the current rate from 17.9 to 17.8 cents per hundred. And we have someone who would like to introduce the city attorney read that for us.
Sure. Mayor, I'd be happy to introduce ordinance number B 2021-12, property tax of 4% increase, and please ask our city attorney to read the summary.
Thank you, Councilman Jones. Ordinance number B 2021-12, property tax 4%. An ordinance amending and adopting as amended an ordinance styled an ordinance levying tax on property subject to tax in the city of Bardstown, fixing rates thereon and designating the funds and purposes for which expenditures are authorized for the fiscal year July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2022. The City Council of the City of Bardstown, Kentucky does hereby ordain as follows. 1, that there be and hereby is levied the sum of 0.1780 cents on each $100 of real property subject to taxation, the sum of 0.1780 cents on each $100 of personal property subject to taxation, and the sum of 24 cents on each $100 of motor vehicle and watercraft subject to taxation in the city of Bardstown for the fiscal year July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2022. All monies hereinafter collected for taxes due for the year 2021 through 2022 and all years prior thereto shall be allocated to the general fund for the general expenses of city government, including but not limited to recreation, police and fire protection, general government, and the maintenance of streets and highways. 3, collection of property tax bills of $10 or less may be waived by the chief financial officer. 4, all taxpayers whose taxes are not paid by the due date printed on the bill and or by the 30th day after the mailing of the tax bill, whichever is later, shall pay a penalty of 10% of the amount of taxes due and unpaid, and in addition thereof shall pay interest on the unpaid taxes at a rate of 1% per month or part thereof until paid. 5, a convenience fee of $2.95 or 3.5%, whichever is greater, will be levied on the credit card transaction payment of property tax bills. This ordinance shall be in full force upon its publication, and all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict are hereby repealed to the extent of that conflict.
Okay, thank you, Audrey. Just for the benefit of our media, I think all of the media that is covering this has been involved in these before. So just make sure that the notation of 4% on the heading of this ordinance does not imply that we're raising property taxes by 4% for the individual property owners, that it's a 4% increase on the total revenue that we take in this year, just as what fiscal court did a few weeks ago. They were able to maintain the same rate to do the same thing. In our case, the reassessments required us to lower it just a tad bit. So Dennis, I know you're not a rookie on this, so please make sure you get it right. Call me if you need me. All right, so this is first reading. We'll do a second reading and have a public hearing. We'll probably meet 10 minutes before the next meeting to do the public hearing and then do a second reading at that meeting. So thank you. Okay. Any reports from staff members or committees? All right. Next item, we have a moratorium, tax moratorium at 418 East Stephen Foster Avenue. Fiscal court has already taken this up and approved it, just so you all know. We get these from time to time. We don't normally get them in the size of the project like this, but it's a significant project, and I think it warrants the approval of the request by 418 East Stephen Foster LLC. Has anybody got any questions on it? The moratorium would be for $5.9 million. The company has already purchased the property for $1,050,000. So it's a significant amount of capital going to go into the former Parkview Motel and Kurtz's Restaurant. And they will be getting historic tax credits on this, so there will be, it's in the historic district, a lot of rules and regulations in place for them to comply with the historic tax credits. They're going to be able to obtain on this, as well as do this project within the historic district. We've already approved the COAs to this point that have been presented on this project.
Mayor, how many years is the tax moratorium? I think I'm overlooking that.
I think it's 5, if I remember. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
yes.
I'm the same, Betty. I couldn't see that listed anywhere on any of the documentation. I must be missing it also.
I'm not sure it's on there.
I'm pretty sure, I'm 99% sure that's in our ordinance.
It's 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, if no one has any other questions, I would ask for a motion then to approve the request from 418 Stephen Foster LLC for the tax moratorium for this project of 5 years.
Be happy to do that.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion by Councilman Buckman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Williams. Any other discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. All right, we're getting through this pretty good. Mobile food vendor, we have Great Dane Pizza Company. The one thing I do know on this one, their application is we still need a copy of their health department permit. So if we approve it, we need to put a condition on it that it's conditioned upon them providing the health department permit for this also. Everything else I think is in order. Is that right, Gary?
Yes, Mayor, that's correct.
All right. Anybody have any other questions? It appears that there's everything else is in order on his application, and local businessman is the owner of this business. So looks like he's going to traditionally operate just on weekends. And he'll have to, do just like all the other ones we approved. He'll have to submit for his permits for these various locations that they plan to operate on. So is there a motion or any more discussion on the mobile food vendor application for Great Dane Pizza Company?
Mayor,
I'll make the motion to approve.
All right, is that by Councilman Jones?
Yes, sir.
I'll second, Mayor, with the stipulation, of course, that he provides the food permit from the health department.
The health permit from the health department. Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Jones, a second by Councilwoman Hart with the condition. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion's carried. All right, we have one more food vendor permit application for D's Butt Barbecue. And I think according to Gary, everything is in order.
That is correct, Mayor.
Okay. Any comments or questions on this?
Yeah, I do, Mayor. I would just need to clarify again. These vendors they can't like go and set up and stay fixed. They have to move. Is that correct? And how often do they have to move? Am I right on that?
Yes.
They can stay there 14 days.
Correct. Consecutive.
Yeah.
They can say there are no more than 14 consecutive days.
No more than 14 consecutive days.
So if they move for one day, they can come back again? Is that, I'm just.
It would be wise for us at some point to take a look at the ordinance because the language is a little bit ambiguous.
Yeah, we're in the process, Joe, we're in the process of updating that ordinance as we speak. We've been working on that with the chamber and tourism, and they are working on updating it. But the applications do require them to give us a date. Like in this case, his first site would be 2 days this weekend. So yeah, he has to apply for each and every time he moves to a different location or a location. He cannot be there more than 14 days in a row. And he has to reapply each time that they move. So we have that. The group sort of the way most of them are operating, they move around to various locations, but typically they're not there more than a week or so at a time.
Okay.
But I guess what I understand, Audrey is saying is that if a property owner decided to let them stay 14 days and then they moved and came back, it could be a repeated process of an unlimited amount of time. Is that correct?
No, I mean, the language, and I mean, I don't, without getting into a whole lot of it, but I mean, the mayor's correct that we've been, I've done some research and some other folks have done some research to look at comparable ordinances, but I think it's more accurate to say that it says they can't stay. I think it actually says they shall stay. The language is confusing, but it makes it seem as if you could be there for 2 or 3 days and then leave and then come back for 2 or 3 days and do that more than 14 days in a month, for example. Does that make sense? It doesn't make it so clear how often you could come there, I guess. But that's something I think that as part of the revision to the ordinance that we would address if it comes up. It hasn't really been that I'm aware of a significant problem as far as enforcement or anything like that. So.
Okay, thank you, Audrey.
If I remember correctly, when we first instituted this ordinance, it was strictly so that someone couldn't come and camp there for the whole summer. So that's why the 14-day limit was put into place. That they can only be there 14 consecutive days in a row, because there were some people that wanted to camp out when they recently, before we had the mobile food vendor ordinance, there were some people that wanted to come camp out on some people's property and stay there, say like for the whole summer. And a lot of the current business owners, the brick and mortar people, they didn't particularly care about that. So that's how the food vendor ordinance came about, with the 14 days in a row.
So Councilman Jones, what it specifically says is the mobile food vendor, it says shall stay in operation, which obviously is a little bit misleading, at one location for 14 consecutive days. Then the unit must move and cannot return to the same location for 30 consecutive days. So I don't know that we actually want them to stay there. You know, it says shall, like they have to stay for 14 days, but the intent, I think what Councilman Shekels is saying is that it was so that they couldn't be there for 60 days in a row. You know, so if they were there for 14 days, they couldn't come back.
Well, that's a little bit less ambiguous. It just really sounds like the shall needs to be changed to can stay up to as many as 14 days
Right.
consecutive.
Or no more than, yeah, at any rate, that's a different, but yes.
Right. Okay, thank you.
We should hope they have that cleaned up in the next couple of months, because we've been working on that for a few months now. We're just waiting on some recommendations. We've got a committee of primarily of the tourism and the chamber helping us on this, because they see it as something that does need to be addressed. Okay, any other questions on this one? If everybody's comfortable now, I need a motion to approve the mobile food vendor application for D's Butts Barbecue.
So move, Mayor.
The motion by Councilman Hibbs, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Buckman. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion's carried. I skipped over something earlier. We do have an Hrb appointment. Susan Sloan will be filling the unexpired 3-year term of Beth Barkley through January 2023. Beth had stepped down. I think she's got some health problems, not of her own, but within her family, that she has to kind of take care of. So she can't continue to serve. So Susan, as most of you know, is a longtime real estate agent here in the community, and also lives in the historic district, had a home that went through renovation in the district. So very familiar with the process. And as a real estate agent, understands the excuse me, historic district. So I think she's very qualified. So I would ask for a motion to approve Susan Sloan filling that unexpired term. Excuse me.
Mayor, I'd like to make, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'd just like to make a motion that we approve Susan Sloan to fill the unexpired term of Beth Barkley on the Hrb board.
All right, we have a motion from Councilman Buckman. Do we have a second?
I'll second, Mayor.
Second by Councilwoman Hart. Excuse me. Any other discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's carried. Excuse me. Any of the, we got cemetery deed, Jason Snellen has one grave site. We approve that by unanimous consent. Any other council members have anything to comment on tonight before the council? All right, we'll move on. Just my short update on the COVID situation. You know, we're back to Zoom meetings because Bardstown and Nelson County are just like every other city and county area in Kentucky right now. The outbreak has gotten to be significant again, and same numbers we saw at some of the worst times previously. Wednesday and Thursday of last week, we had 65 cases. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we had 115 more cases. Our hospitals in the area here in Hardin County and Louisville, as you know, are filling up, having problems dealing with all this. So it's very real. It's really attacking our residents and stuff at a very serious rate. So I just want to let you all know where we stand and just encourage people to really give a serious thought to those that are not vaccinated, need to really think about getting vaccinated. It's not me preaching. They need to talk to their healthcare providers and our pharmacists in the community. All the ones I'm talking to are just really, really stressing and begging people to give that consideration and get the shots. They're readily available. Just this week alone, just in 2 or 3 days, I've had business owners telling me they're back to being strained with having enough employees to operate their business because their employees are being dealing with COVID. Many young people. I've talked to people this week that have children and grandchildren under 12 years old that are sick, and they're just not sick like a common cold. Or some of them are having really bad repercussions from this. And I've had a close friend tell me that his 69-year-old mother lives out of state. He lives here. She's probably going to pass within the next 24 hours. She just would not take the shot, thought she wouldn't get it. And her granddaughter got it. Her daughter got it. And then she got it. The grandmother got it. So unfortunately, 69 years old, she's not going to be with us much longer. So that's all I want to say is that this is encourage the community to really consider getting the vaccine. That's one of our main ways that we can keep this thing from getting more out of control than it already is. But it's very much out of control. Joe Pruitt's daily runs with our EMS, they are taking people as far away as Bowling Green to find beds available for hospitalizations because sometimes they get to hospitals and the wait is entirely too long for them to get them into the ER here and also in Hardin County and Louisville. So it's really straining our EMS runs and are primarily all respiratory related that's causing this uptick. So it's a challenge for everybody. So just want to give you all an update that it's not just something that it's real. It's right here in our backyard. So we really, really need people to step up. Okay, we're going to go into, I need a motion to go out of regular session and go into executive session pursuant to KRS 61-8101C, discussion of proposed or pending litigation against or on behalf of a public agency.
So move, Mayor.
So move.
All right, we have a motion by Councilman Buckman and a second, I think, by Councilman Williams. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I would tell the media that I don't anticipate us having to vote or taking any action on this executive session. After we come out of executive session, we will go back into regular session and be adjourning. So we'll give them a minute. They'll give me the heads up on when the media and anybody else on the call is off the